Hello and welcome back. So in the last video, we were working on the show action, and this is what it looks like right now. Here's my title, there's description, I have this room for a profile image, and if I look at the index page, which is listing all recipes, there you go, there's my recipe listing, it links to the show action. Okay, now one thing is, if you look at this title, okay, title of this page where I have basically the headline listing all recipes, and then when I go here, it looks pretty much the same, right? Same format. And anytime you have this, okay, you should consider if you can refactor this. So if I look in my show action right here, in my show view, actually, you see this HR align, center, recipe name, and I have this, and then if I look at my index HTML DRB, HR align center, again, this. So let's go ahead and refactor this. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a title partial, a page title partial. So I'm going to call this a page title. So this one will be for the individual recipe. I'll just call it the name. And here in the index, it's going to be listing all recipes. So let's create a page title partial. First thing I'm going to do is under views, I have layouts, pages, recipes. Here I'm going to create a shared folder. The reason for a shared folder is if this title, this page title, was only for recipes, I might have put it in the recipes folder. But since this is something that I might use for other resources as well, for example, users, when I have users, I might use the title there as well. I'm going to create a shared folder and store it there. So right click on views, new folder. I'm going to call it shared, and under shared, right click, new file. And since this is going to be a partial, we're going to start with underscore page underscore title .html.erb. Okay. So the underscore up front means this is a partial. Let's pull it up. Okay, there you go. Now let's take this code, HR align center, and we're going to put it in our partial. So right here, Command X to cut it out, page title, Command V. And here, I'm going to have a dynamic element, right? Because depending on which page it is, this title is going to be different. So I can't have something like this, which says recipe name. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have embedded Ruby, and this is not going to be for @recipe. It could be for anything. So I'm simply going to say title, okay? Title. And this title is not defined anywhere, but I'll show you how to define it. So I'm simply going to say HR align center title, okay? And then an underline, save that. In my show action now, I'm going to reference this. So I'm going to say embedded Ruby equals render shared. Since it's a different folder, I have to say shared slash page title, okay, within quotes. And now, since this is title, I've named it title, I have to say what title is. So over here, I'm going to say title colon @recipe.name. Okay, I want that as the title. There you go. So now this @recipe name is going to be passed into my view as this title object. So I'm going to save this. Okay, and let's take a look at what this did. Over here, if I reload the page, this is my listing recipes page. So let's go to show. There you go. All right, there you go. I have a title with the name of the recipe. Now, I want to capitalize this. I want the first letter to always be capital. So over here, where I pass this in my page title, I want this to be capital always, okay? I want the first letter to always be capital, so dot capitalize. Regardless of the name and how it's saved in my database, I want the first letter to be capitalized here. So I'm just gonna use the capitalize method in my partial. So regardless of what it's passed in, reload, there you go, capital, Italian vegetables. Perfect. All right, so back here, I'm gonna do the same thing for my index action. Now that I have a partial, I can simply go to my index, remove this, okay, and say embedded Ruby equals render, and then within quotes, shared page title, and then title, I'll say within double quotes here, because I'll just simply pass in the string showing all recipes. Close embedded Ruby. Okay, let's take a look. Reload. Oops, wrong page. Okay, showing all recipes. Perfect. Now you may be wondering, okay, I have written some code here. I've written some code here. It's not like I'm changing the amount of code I've written here. But let's say you want to change how the title looks on every page. Okay, let's say you want to change that. Then instead of individually going into each of your views, index, show, we only have 2, but let's say you have 50 views and you want to change all of them. Then instead of having to go into each page, you can simply change this one, this title partial, and it'll impact all of the pages. Okay, all of the pages that are calling this title partial. And this is another example of refactoring. All right, great. So now the next step is we're going to work on the Gravatar. And I hope in the last video, per my instructions, you were able to go to the Gravatar site and associate a Gravatar image with your email address. So now we're going to test it out. Now what Gravatar does is it uses what's called a digest, okay? Or to be more specific, a MD5 hex digest. So what it does is it grabs the URL of your email address associated with your Gravatar account, okay? And then it basically simply serves that wherever you call it. So in my app folder, okay, in my app folder, if you go to helpers, you have this folder called helpers. If you pull it up, you'll see application helper. So application helper is simply a place where you put in all of the methods that you're going to use in your views, okay? In your views folder, you never want to write out a method inside a view. For example, in the show page, you don't want to write out a method here. That's brittle code. You never want to have methods defined in your views. Can you do it? Yes, but it's bad practice to do so. So what you do is in your app helpers folder, in your application helper, you write down the method, and then these methods that you write here, they're available to your views to use. So what we're going to do is we're going to define a Gravatar method that's simply going to go out to the web and grab the image associated with the Gravatar. That's it. Basically the email address of the user that you've saved. So let's go ahead and create this. We're going to call this Gravatar_4. And this is going to take in a couple of arguments, end, okay? So this is the method. And we're going to first define a Gravatar ID variable. And this is going to be the MD5 hex digest, all right? And the way you grab this, and this is defined in the Gravatar documentation. If you look for it, it's not important to memorize this. You can simply copy paste this, okay? This is how you grab it. Digest, : MD caps 5, okay? So M and D are caps, : hex digest, okay? And then within parentheses, you provide the email for which you want this, okay? So user.email.downcase. So you may be wondering, where's this user coming from? Good question, because we have to pass in the user, all right? So when we pass in the user object to this method, it's going to grab the email address for this user. And then it's going to store the hex digest of that as the Gravatar ID, okay? Now the next step is we're going to say size equals options : size. And this is simply so I can alter the size of the Gravatar, okay? Alter the size of the image. So in my methods, another thing I'm going to pass in is I'm going to pass in the option to change the size with a default size defined. So options equals open close curly brace size : 80. So I'm going to say there's a default size of 80, but I want the option to change this size. Okay, so I can send in a user and size, let's say 150, and we'll see how this works. But if I don't send in the size, I want the default to be 80. All right, save this. And what's next? Now we need to form the URL. So to form the URL, we're going to say gravatar underscore URL equals, and this is what we're going to grab from the gravatar site. Okay, HTTPS, pretty standard, secure.gravatar.com/avatar. So this is the standard address, okay, where you grab the avatar from, and then you have to pass in this gravatar ID because that has the hex digest for the email address associated with that. So over here, we're going to say pound open curly brace, okay, close curly brace, and within it, we have to pass in the gravatar underscore ID, okay? And then the size. So we're going to say question mark S equals pound again, open, close curly brace, and within it size. So this is how you alter the size. And then we have to return the image. So we're going to return the image in an image tag. So image tag gravatar URL, which we just grabbed from here, okay? And then best practice alt, in case it can't find it, user dot name, and this is going to be class of, within quotes, I'm going to say image dash circle, and you can give it a different class of image that if you want. Okay, I'm going to use image circle. And that's it. So my gravatar for method is defined. Make sure you get this gravatar URL correct. You know, there's some delicate code here. Just make sure it's all set up correctly and you use double quotes, etc. Okay, so gravatar for method is done. Now let's reference it. Okay, let's reference it in our show view first. Let's pull up the show view right here, and I will pull up the show view here. So I'll click on this. There you go. This is my show view. Okay. So first thing I'm going to change is, see how it says description here? I don't want description. I want this to be called steps. So I'm going to say steps. I'm going to update here and call it steps. Okay, then the line. And here you see how I have recipe description. Okay, so for this recipe it's great. But what if I have multiple line recipes with lots of enters and everything? Okay, then it won't display it correctly. Okay, it'll still display it in one line. If I have multiple lines, then I want it to format and display correctly. So what I'm going to do is enter in this method here, simple underscore format, and then put recipe description within parentheses in there. Okay, so this will simply display it in the formatting that I entered it in. Okay, and then after this, I'm going to enter in a line. Okay, and then instead of a p tag here, I'm going to use a div class equals, and I want this to pull right, okay, within quotes, and then I want a p class equals center, then I want the created by to be EM, so it's italics, Command X, and put the other one, the closing tag at the end. Close this p tag. Then I want another p class equals center, and within this one, I'm going to link to gravatar underscore 4, and I have my user because I have my recipe, right? So I'm going to say at recipe.user. Okay, and size, I'll say, actually let me just leave out size because my default is 80, so I'll see what it is. And I want this to go to the recipes path right now. Okay, I don't have my user page yet. So I simply want this to go to the recipes path. I'll change it to the show user page later on. And then I want another p tag, but this one I want to say p class equals center, and then small, I'll say embedded Ruby equals at recipe dot user dot name dot capitalize. Okay, because I want, since I have the recipe, I can reference the user and then I can reference the name of the user. So here's something here. Okay, this is something to remember. I use users all the time when I'm dealing with users, but remember, in this application we call them chefs, we don't call them users. So if you run into trouble, like if I run this code, it's actually going to give me an error saying what is user. It won't know what to do. So something important to remember here, remember for us it's chef. So recipe.chef. Then here recipe.chef, and then it's not name, it's chef name. So chef name dot capitalize. Okay, this is something important to remember, and I wanted you to see how I make errors also and how to troubleshoot them if you run into trouble. So this one, and then close embedded Ruby, close the small tag, and then next I want to say div class equals pull right, and close the tag. Embedded Ruby equals time underscore ago in words, and I want to say at recipe dot created at. Okay, close the parentheses, close the embedded Ruby tag, close the div. But before you close the div, I want to say ago. So created this much time ago. Close the div tag, close the p tag, and then close this div tag right here. Okay, so I'm going to close that. And then I have this recipe.chef name from before. I can just simply delete this. I don't need this anymore. Delete. Okay, so there's my closing div tag. All right, so let's see what this looks like. Okay, over here, if I reload this page. Okay, so right here I have an error, and this is in my show, it's saying undefined method name for object. Okay, so right here, look at this. I used user.name. Okay, now that's a problem because this is supposed to be chef name. Remember, the alternate is chef name. So let's look at our method. Let's look at our application helper. And there's my gravatar 4. I'm passing in user. Now this you can call user chef whatever, because this is just for this method itself. And how I reference this doesn't really matter as long as I reference it correctly within the method. So right here, name should be chef name. Save that. Okay. Let's reload. Okay, I have a broken image. It's not showing up correctly. And we're approaching the 20-minute mark, so we're going to leave it here, and we're going to troubleshoot this and continue our discussion in the next video. See you there.